not looking for a lot of pad rotation.
Andy Be Cool might have the most bizarre polishing techniques
No need to crosshatch here.
in the industry.
I want to create that fantastic result. I don't want to polish a car for 30 hours. I'm trying to get around them in under an hour.
What's up, guys? Andy Cool here for Lake Country Manufacturing.
You might know him from his time at Lake Country or Koch Chemie.
P stands for protection.
But for 2 decades, he's been detailing in Florida, from cars to big-ticket jobs like boats and yachts.
My largest job, one job, was $150,000. I just see that a lot of people don't think like that, and that's kind of what sets me apart, is that I'm always going, can this be better?
So what are his secrets to being profitable and keeping his sanity?
I fired off all my staff, and now I only have subcontractors. If it's not atrocious to your nostrils, it's not going to do the job.
Do you clay bar before polishing?
90% of the time, no.
Andy Be Cool, what does it feel like to be you?
I would say it feels pretty good at this point, you know? Feel free and liberated.
Why is that?
I think when I turned 40, I made a lot of promises to myself to kind of live different and not settle with certain not settle into certain old patterns, and I think I've done a pretty good job of doing so.
What are some of the patterns that were holding you back?
It was the drive to accomplish things for fulfillment and happiness. I thought that if I would get certain things, that it would make me more of a person. I would be a better person, or I would say if I got this, then that was my identity. And I realized that that's not the case. Those outside things were never going to fulfill me.
Do you have to get the fulfillment or the money to then see that, or can it happen before the success? Like, how do you teach someone early on in life that just accomplishing things will not give you the happiness you think it will?
That's a great question, and I don't know if it's possible. I've made tons of money doing this, and it never fulfilled me. But I don't know if I would ever have learned that lesson without having to go through it. I think it goes back to detailing in general. Like, you could tell someone all day long how to polish something and how to lay down PPF or whatever it may be, but until they get their hands on it and do it, they never really know how to do it.
For those who don't know who you are, why should they listen to anything about detailing? Why should they care what you have to say?
That's a good question. I'm just a regular old Joe from Alva, Florida. I've been doing this now for 20 years, owned my own business for 20 years. I was into
Clean
it.
Freaks, right?
Yeah, the Detail Freaks. And
Detail Freaks, sorry, not Clean Freaks.
Yeah, the Detail Freaks, Fort Myers, Florida. Like I said, I've been doing it for 20 years. I was working for someone else for probably 6-8 months before I started my own business. And I've learned from top to bottom this industry. I've made tons of mistakes, and I've hit some of the highest highs that you could imagine. Like, for example, when I started out, if I was getting $150 for a complete detail, like, I was the man. And that $150 would be generally a day-long job. Now, you think it's 20 years ago, so maybe now that's an equivalent to a $450 detail. I'm not exactly sure how to quantify that, but my largest to date job, one job, was $150,000. So I've done everything you can imagine. I've cleaned up dog shit, puke, nasty spills and maggots, and I've scrubbed mud flaps on RVs, and I mean, I've done absolutely everything you can imagine in this industry. So I think I have a lot of knowledge to give. I've also been able to work side by side with manufacturers, which I'm really proud of. Where manufacturers actually reached out to me because of my questioning of their products and said, "Hey, man, we would like to have you on our team to show us the technical aspects of our products." Because manufacturers know their products. They know this pad is made out of this and whatever, but they don't know necessarily how to put the pad on paint and the nuances, because everything in life is about nuance. They don't know those nuances. So, having manufacturers reach out to me, I mean, honestly, it really strokes my ego, to know that people, want my knowledge.
And you do trainings, and yet you're saying that you're working on the ego and what actually makes you happy, right?
Sorry, one more time?
Well, you talk about strokes the ego, but I feel like you're also in this reflective place of like, what do I actually want to be happy, right? And the ego may or may not be a necessarily like healthy part of that life.
Right. I think it can, if you can keep it in check, it can be healthy, but yeah, it can definitely be unhealthy. And one part of that is like when I first started this, I thought I was the man. Nobody could tell me nothing. I was the best of, the best of the best. And imagine this is me after 6 or 8 months of doing this, right? And I didn't listen to anybody, not a soul. You couldn't tell me nothing about detailing. And that probably took about 7 years, honestly, till I got out of my own way, swallowed a little bit of crow, started going online to forums, going to different events, and actually started listening to what other people had to say. And I honestly think that's when my career took off. Like, that's when I go, wow, there's way more to this. If I realize that, yeah, I'm doing it this way, but there could be a better way, that changed my whole perception. Because now every time I do anything, I'm thinking, how can I do this better? And it might just be a subtle little change, but that can have a big impact when you're doing, a massive yacht or an RV or, a big paint correction job. Subtle little changes can save you a ton of time.
Well, I remember when we first met, we were at this Koch Chemie event in Atlanta, and I was over there testing out one of these polishers on paint, and you walk over and start giving me advice or something, and I was like, who is this guy? Or you were giving me advice, or you were giving someone else advice, and either I was wondering why you were talking to me or why you were talking to him, and then I was also wondering why everybody was like kind of crowding in around listening. And I had never heard of you, and I thought after 2 years in the game that I knew everything there was to know, right? Of course, like we all do. And I was like, if I've never heard of this guy, who is he, And then we get to chatting, and you started teaching me methods of polishing that absolutely blew my mind. So Ivan, close your ears. This is not the DIY system. Andy, what is the Andy B? Dude, we coined the Andy B Cool polishing method in my shop. We started using some of these techniques you taught me to like, oh yeah, I'm using the Andy Cool technique to finish.
That's cool.
What, I no longer have a shop, so maybe it wasn't that good, but no, that's all love. I'm just curious. What are some of these techniques about polishing that you feel like aren't being taught, that you really feel like, I do this every day, I've been doing this for a while, I really make money, I really do this, this is what works?
Well, my big thing was just cutting down the time on what it takes to correct a car. So I just started playing with, I was thinking in my mind, that's how I kind of wrap my head around it. We're using like diminishing abrasive products. That means if it starts at a 10, it probably finishes at a 4. Starts
at a 10 and cut, and then cuts at 4 by the end, right? So you can kind of use the same pad and polish to then finish within the step. Is that the idea?
Right. It's just trying to cut out steps. So like now I kind of refer to it as like a 1.5 step, where like I'll prime a finishing pad, but I never really add back any product to that pad throughout the process. So I'll go through it, I'll do my cutting, and I'll leave the product on the surface, and then just grab my finishing pad and just go back over top of it with my finishing pad.
On a different polisher? Is that how efficient this is, or do you swap pads? So
if you have the ability to have 2 polishers, I would do 2 polishers. Or you could just peel your pad and put a new pad, put a new pad. But
the peeling is hard, because then you're dealing with like that hot Velcro or the hook and loop. Sometimes that can,
yeah.
You could mess with the Velcro on the backing plate, longevity, and then you can also kind of mess up the pads if you're swapping a lot, and I think it hurts your efficiency, because I think I've heard Jason Kilmer say he likes to have 2 polishers too. So keep going. Yep.
Yeah. So I always have on my cart out there, I always have 3 polishers. I have the little PXE for all my 1, 2, and 3 inch needs, and then I have 2 6 inch. Well, I guess they're 5 inch polishers. That way I can have my cutting pad and my finishing pad right there. So I generally cut, in a standard, depending on the severity, 1x1s, 2x2s, whatever it is. I'll cut, say, half the hood, and then in those little sections, and then when I finish, I do the entire half of the hood and during the finishing step. Because what I saw a lot of times was people were really struggling to get to that finish, and they're taking this like the same amount of time or sometimes even longer to finish down. So after I get done with my test spot, I know it's gonna take this amount to get it done. Of course, my lighting is set up to where I can kind of see through the polish and see if I'm knocking out all those heavy scratches, and then I just finish with my cut stage, and then big sections for my finishing. So I usually like to say that I can finish the car in about 25% of the time that it took me to cut.
What are your techniques when you cut? What's taking you longer?
So I am heavy downward pressure. When I measure it on the scale, it's somewhere between 15 and 20 pounds of downward pressure. I do not care if the machine spins. If you're using a random orbital, I do not care if my machine is spinning. That really slowed me down back in the old days, is trying to lift off and make sure that my pad was always spinning with the random orbitals. I'm more of like a 90% overlap instead of the standard 50-50. And my hand speed is brisk, because I understand that if I'm going to be putting heavy downward pressure on the surface, that's going to help to generate more heat. So what I do is I move more like the old school body shop guys with the rotary, where my hand speed is a lot faster, right? And I'm more or less scrubbing the paint. And for me, once you get the feel of it, it's really easy to train someone to do it. That's one of the big things that I had in my shop, and why I didn't go too far in my first 7 years is because I was the only one who could do this. I was magical, And then for getting out there and going, hey, if I want to, really make money at this, I need to do it this way. I had to be able to train people to do what I do. I have to try to make a photocopy, a carbon copy of myself. So that kind of got my head going, okay, how do I make these processes super simple, to where anyone can do it? It's got to be the McDonald's hamburger.
And so that's how you cut, and you're not getting the paint too hot? You're not swelling it, you don't think?
No, so generally I don't go. We don't get the paint above 130 degrees. We do allow it to gas and go back to where it's going to be. Sometimes I guess it may swell, but honestly, I've never seen an issue with the way I polish.
You don't see cars come back in 2 weeks after sitting in the Florida sun, and all of a sudden the paint that you thought was pristine is full of swirls?
Nope. And I have a Bentley in here that we could show you that I polished last year using that same method. A Rolls Royce just left, same method. These things look absolutely pristine still.
I believe it. I mean, you've been in the game for a while. Go ahead.
And I've never seen a huge. I've never seen someone show me paint swelling, and people talk about it. But I've never seen it in real life. Someone go, here, do this, and I don't know if they could show me a time lapse or something that proves this the issue. It hasn't come into my sphere of influence. So honestly, I don't really think about it.
Well, I look at it, the people who are doing this every day and making money, and they're still in shops right now, and they have a method, I'm listening. Because I was in the game maybe 5-6 years as a detailer myself, still am a detailer at heart, still detail cars, but I don't have a shop and I'm not doing it for money. It's not my income source. So guys who I look at as successful business owners, whatever that is, whether it's you got people or it's just you and you're polishing paint for money, I'm always listening because this is your life, man. It's not someone teaching you how to do this on the internet. This is your life. So I like to hear it.
Yeah. And I believe when I go out to train people that I just want to give you tools. I don't like, at the beginning when I first started training people 6-7 years ago, I thought that people, like, I was a really particular. I want this person to do it like me, and that's it. Now, my mind goes, if I could give you one little tip that will change the way you do things, speed you up, make you more money, then I've done my job. You don't have to do it exactly like I did it, but just let me give you something that's valuable. And generally, it's highly valuable. When I get those phone calls from guys that go, dude, we just corrected this car that normally would take 2 of us all day. We got it done in like 4 hours, and we're able to code it. I'm like, dude, I've done my job. You know
what's interesting? I want to hear your finishing technique, but you've got DIY detail, and then you've got sort of Ivan's method, which he and I get people who say that to us all the time. Like, it used to take me 8 hours, and then I did it in 3 or whatever. And it's a different approach, but both are aimed at efficiency. Both are aimed at get out of your head as trying to be the world's best detailer and try to get a really good result, make money, see your family. Because I was pulling these all-nighters trying to get perfect paint, and it wasn't because I hadn't heard from you or Ivan or anybody else or Jason Rose. I literally got taught from all of you in person at various times. I was just too stubborn to get out of the way. So now I'm just curious, what do you have to say? I'm not here to argue with you. What is your polishing technique? How do you do that in a quarter of the time? Again, the Andy Be Cool polishing method is how so cutting was different, but I remember the way you taught me to kind of like go over the paint really fast, and it just works. But maybe you can explain, how do you polish? How do you finish down after you've cut?
So honestly, it's the same exact way as I cut, but just a larger section, right? So I'm going to do 6 to 8 sections at a time finishing, right? Same downward pressure, not caring if the pad is spinning whatsoever, and 90% overlap. So the reason I like the idea of not allowing the pad to spin a lot is that I believe that's where most of the micro marring comes from, especially when you're using fibrous pads, right? If you're allowing it to spin a lot, then they can get those little wispy little micro marring, DA haze, whatever. I see that a lot more if I allow it to spin. And I sat in here on black hoods and just tested this stuff. And that's what I came to believe, that if the more I allow that pad to spin, the more micro marring I get. And I'm under the assumption that if I can, so say I cut this section. If I wipe it off without using just a towel, just wipe it off, no panel prep or anything like that. If I can see a discernible haze, then I haven't done a good enough job, right? I want to get to 90% of the finish, because I know, like, no matter what, if you're using a fibrous pad and you're cutting with it and you panel wipe it, you're going to leave. There's going to be haze there, right?
You're talking about a wool or a microfiber pad?
Wool or microfiber, yes, sir.
With the dual action, okay, after the compound stage, got it.
Right. So I want to cut out steps so I don't have to panel wipe in between and do all that stuff. My method I came up with that when I'm done with my cutting phase, and this is during my test spots, when I come up with what I'm going to do during my cutting phase is the number of passes or whatever. If I were to wipe it off, is there a haze left by that pad without panel wiping it? And as long as there's not a haze there, or something that's really like if it's one of those, it has to jump out at you. It can't be like where you got to get real close and right there and find it. Because look, if you put a 5,000 Kelvin a light on that close enough, you're going to find some haze. Something that your customer is absolutely never going to see.
Never. Gosh, I wish I would have listened to this. Anyway.
Yeah, then you're fine, right? And then when I move on, to my finishing step, as long as I don't have any discernible haze, same downward pressure, because a lot of times when you're using a finishing pad with a dual action polisher, the soft pad ends up dragging along the surface. There's a lot of interaction between the pad and the paint, right? And during your finishing step, you don't want that. You want the interaction of the pad and the paint during your cutting phase. When you're trying to jewel something or put a really fine finish on it, you want the least amount of interaction. So it seems counterintuitive, but if I was to press down on the machine and scrub the paint and not allow it to spin, it was like you didn't have the spinning plus the oscillation going on. It was just the oscillation that was creating a better finish, right? And then another thing that I found was that a lot of times on GM blacks and super soft Porsche black, the solid color, the red, whatever, I was getting a lot of haze for my finishing pad, no matter what I would try.
Yes.
So then I started stepping up to more dense pads, to where at this point, when we're finishing down the softest paints, we're using our absolute most dense, our hardest pad to finish, because what's happening is the pad is hydroplaning on the polish. It's not interacting with the surface at all. And that's even with pushing down on it, right? You're just like, it's one of those things you have to see to believe, because every time I tell somebody doing something like this, whenever I just try to explain it to someone, I get that, yeah, whatever, pal.
It's show, don't tell. You got to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
But there was something about, a firm foam pad. I want to know what products you're using, by the way, these days. But I would take like my firm foam finishing pad, which actually I was using Koch Chemie, and you were with them for a while, so let's talk about it in a second. But I was using Purple, M3 and their purple pad, and Speed 6, and I would just I would do pressure and fast passes, pressure, fast passes, pressure, fast passes. And a good amount of the time on a lot of paints, that method really worked. And then if it didn't, I would adjust my technique accordingly. Again, going for results only I cared about, trying to get to the nth degree that a customer would never see. What products are you recommending these days? What are you using?
So I've really moved into the realm of primer polishes, stuff that I can polish with and that I can coat directly on top of, right?
So you're just like full efficiency at this point.
Right. And a lot of people are going to say, well, you're hiding shit, that's like, whatever. And I'm like, so in my testing, what I did was I panel wiped all those products, actually the standard G-Technic panel wipe, right?
Oh, you did, like that stuff will
That's gasoline, right?
Tear paint apart if you do it wrong.
Right. And so I still always keep that product around.
The Truth Serum product or what?
What's crystal serum?
That's your Truth Serum? That panel wipe?
Yeah, it is. It is definitely the Truth Serum. And I think I coined that one a long time ago, and I think it's been picked up ever since.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work. Didn't stick.
People were using other products in the market. I won't mention any names. A lot of colorants in them. Look, if it's not atrocious to your nostrils, it's not going to do the job. All right, it's going to leave something behind. I panel wiped all the products, and I was able to create the same finish with those products as any finishing polish. Right. So I'm like, why not use a primer polish? Wait an hour, maybe overnight, whatever you're comfortable. That's going to depend on where you live. Like down here in Florida, ceramic coatings, for the most part, are humidity cured. We have a lot of that. So I wait an hour, and then I coat directly on top of those. And for me, that's amazing, because now I don't have to worry about jacking up my finish by putting a hot solvent on a freshly polished paint. Because no matter what, you're gonna mar the paint at some point, right? And have to fix something when you're solvent wiping, especially if you're using a solvent that's actually going to do the job and remove all those polishing oils. So
yeah, I suppose it depends on your process, right? I mean, you're trying to. Okay, so I'm listening. This is the Andy Be Cool method. But do you compound with a primer polish? Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, what's an efficient, like, real life, no BS. You're not here on a video trying to train me, and like, are you really doing it? Are you really not? Like because people are always going to be like, I don't know, he's just sitting there talking, he's got headphones on. I don't believe him. Like, give me a real world example of like what you cut with, and then how you use the primer polish.
If I was to go out to my shop right now, and I was going to correct a car, okay, where it stands right now, I would grab Dr. Beasley's NSP 150 or 95, and I would use that to cut. Now, just one interesting caveat to using those products. I cannot use my downward pressure method with those products. It does not cut the same at all. I have to allow the pad to spin with those products, right? But what I can do is I can move to a rotary for my cutting because it's spinning all the time. So then I don't have to worry about that. So what I was doing at first is I was like, okay, well, I'll just let the pad spin. But then, it just wasn't, the results weren't coming fast enough, right? So I'm like, you know what? I've been using rotaries for 20 years. And it's funny because I hardly use them on cars, right? But now with that product, if I really need to cut out some stuff, I go with a rotary. I use Lake Country's DA wool pad from the Marine line, right? It'd be similar to a Rupes pad. Like their, I say it cuts like their blue foam, and then finishes like their yellow. Those two, the red, the blue and yellow wool pads they have out. So
okay, the Rupes ones, yeah.
Right. So the Lake Country DA wool from the Marine line right now is my favorite cutting pad, because I've moved away a lot from microfiber just because of the amount of heat it creates, right? I like wool because it's a natural fiber. It creates less heat. So especially with the way I do things, right? I need to mitigate that heat as much as possible. So I would cut. I would not wipe off the product, right? I'll go around. It depends on the day. Sometimes I'll do a whole panel at once. Sometimes I'll go around the whole car. It kind of just really depends on how I'm feeling that day. I can either do one panel at a time or the whole car. But then I would grab, like I said, my finishing pad on my dual action polisher. I would prime it once, where I would actually put product on there, smear it in, then I'd blow the pad off. This is before I use it. Put it on, blow it off.
Is this a different liquid than you use to buff?
Yeah, so that would be like, I have a couple different options on that one. I do use the NSP 45 from Dr. Beasley's. I also have a couple other products that I've been playing with, like Geon Primer.
But I thought you were cutting with something different. I thought you were leaving the compound on the surface and then going right to polishing.
So I do leave the NSP 150 or 95 on the surface.
And are you polishing with a different liquid?
I only prime the polishing pad once.
With a different liquid?
Right.
With your primer polish, okay.
I want to finish polish on there, something that's really light, right? And then, like I said, I prime the pad, then I blow it off before I'm going to use it, right? Just so it's oily, it's got something on there. It's not putting a dry pad onto that compound that I have. So the compound is still on the surface. My pad has been primed and blown out, and then I buzz over it. That section is done.
And that's you put a primer polish on?
What's that?
That's a primer polish?
Yes, both of them are primer polishes.
Oh, both are primer polishes.
Yes, I use my panel wipe at the beginning of the job and then never again. So before I ever start polishing, I go through with G-Tech panel wipe, 91% alcohol, something heavy duty. I want to strip this paint, right? And then I never touch it again with anything that's silicone based that could get in the way of my coating bonding after I'm done.
Primer. And you're not playing armchair chemist? Like, are they compatible with each other? Are they two different primer polishes, you're saying?
Yep. So what I did when I first started getting these products is I have two test hoods out here, and I did every conceivable combination of these products, coated them, and then left them out here in the Florida sun for 6 months. And I did not see anything like I would wash them once a week. Let's be honest, it probably averaged out to once every 2 weeks. But also, you're thinking about this is sitting underneath trees, getting rained on, getting the sun. It's brutal down here. So after that amount of time, I was completely confident with these products bonding to each other and working synergistically.
It's wild what you're telling me. So you heavy solvent panel wipe first, then some kind of heavy hitter polishing primer. That I don't know Dr. Beasley's that well. So is there one that cuts more, and then you're using a different one from them to finish?
Right. So they have 150, 95, and 45, and what that is that's the size of the abrasive that's in there. So the 150 is the heaviest, goes down to 45.
So they're compatible like that. You can use it, and that's why you use them to cut, leave it on the surface, and then slightly prime your pad, and then blow it off, and then go ahead and Andy, be cool that
Correct.
thing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you can do it.
Dude,
I like it.
Yeah, go ahead. If you've never tried this, it doesn't sound right, but
it doesn't.
I liked your methods, bro.
But you if you want to be successful, and you have to try stuff. Like, don't get stuck into, I heard this, I'm going to do it this way. Like, get some experiential knowledge of what you're doing. That's what it's about. Everyone's got to have some slow days. Dude, on your slow days, stick around a little bit and figure stuff out. And honestly, like, the more and more I progress through my career, and this might be just an ego thing, I just see that a lot of people don't think like that. And that's kind of what sets me apart, is that I'm always going, can this be better? And because I don't want to spend this much time. I want to create that fantastic result, but I don't want to polish a car for 30 hours. It's just, most of the times the customer doesn't want to pay for it. And they're never going to, I polished a Rolls Royce last year. We spent 30 hours polishing. The customer comes in, goes, looks great, pays me and leaves. Never even look. I was hoping he would look around in the cracks for some dust or something, didn't even look at the car, and that's honestly, that's the largest percent of my customers don't care that much. Even when the ones that come in and act like they care that much, when the job's all said and done, they're just like, oh man, it looks awesome. And they leave.
I have a serious question for you. Do you clay bar before polishing?
90% of the time, no.
Why?
90% of the time, no. All right. So I chemically strip. If you want to know my process.
Yeah, I want to know the Andy Be Cool process. That's what we're here for, baby. Let's go.
So Joe Schmo rolls in with his car, right?
What's Joe Schmo paying for his car? He's not just Joe Schmo. He's spending a lot of money here, probably.
Yeah, so Joe Schmo wants an entry-level coating job, right? He doesn't care about paint correction, because probably 7 out of 10 customers, I steer away from correcting their paint. I don't really like to do it. At the beginning,
you're talking like a two-step. You don't really want to or just polish in general.
I don't like to cut their car.
Okay.
Right? I don't like to chase all the fine haze out of it. I don't like to, because you know what? If I don't point it out, 7 out of 10 customers never see it. I've sat in here and I have paint correction lights on. When you pull your car in and I do an evaluation, it has about 12 single diode paint correction lights on it. And I stand there and talk with my customer, and they never point out the haze. They never point out the fine scratches. They never point out any of that stuff. So in my head,
well, 99% of cars around the world are full of scratches. You just get to thinking most of it is kind of normal looking, like the haze. That's just what paint looks like. But anyway, I'm interrupting you. Keep going. I'm sorry.
So in my head, if I point out all this stuff, even if me and my buddy are riding in a car at night and I pull up behind a car and my lights are on the back of it, and I say, oh man, look at all those swirls. I've had buddies talk to me a year later and be like, dude, ever since you showed me that shit, I see it on every car. Now you just created a sickness, right?
Yep.
So you're creating a super picky client, and you're going to put something in their head. You're planting that seed. They're never going to get it out of their head. So say you do paint, you convince this guy, you show it to him, and you convince him, oh yeah, I'm going to, let's paint correct the car before we do this. Then when he starts to put fine marring into it, or he runs it through, he's going to start to see it. So then you've built in like a picky client, and I think it's just it's an insidious little seed that you're planting in their head, and you might as well, if they don't see it, I don't see it either. You know.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
so I love the entry level coating job. Car comes in, we do a rinseless wash on the whole car. We wet wash the wheels and fender wells, maybe the lower rockers and stuff, but I don't like to soak the whole car down because in the past, it was taking longer to prep the car for polishing than it did in some cases, especially on these entry-level coating jobs. It was taking longer to prep it than it was to polish it and coat it. And, you know, with trying to blow out all the water out of all the cracks and do all that stuff,
Yeah.
it was just a nightmare. So I said, okay, let's go to waterless washing. You know, we use safe methods. I've washed, waterless washed, rinseless washed. There's a difference. I always call it. It's interchangeable for me.
Look,
So
you're what I affectionately am feeling like as like a guy who actually knows how to make money detailing. So I'm all ears. You just tell me your method. You don't have to qualify whether it's safe or not.
yeah, so it comes in.
By the way, like we're big at rinseless washing, you know, in my universe. So like I appreciate it, but I don't care what you call it. Just tell me your method.
I started doing it 6 years ago, and I think even for maintenance, for any customer that comes in here gets a coating, I show them a rinseless wash method to maintain their car because it's feasible for them to be able to do that, you know. And the barrier for entry is really low. They don't have to buy all this stuff, you know. They just buy a few items. They're good. They're cruising, and they can maintain their car.
All you need, I mean, I like to use a hose. You still only need a hose. You don't even need a pressure washer to rinseless wash your car. I like to have a hose for that kind of pre-rinse. But anyway, I digress because you're talking about. I mean, do you get dirty cars coming in? Like, what do they look like when they come in?
Yeah, so if it's really dirty, then I'll probably foam cannon it with a high pH soap and power wash it with my turbo nozzle, which is the one that spins. It's not just the fan. I really think that turbo nozzle is like a cleaner. It does cleaning where the other one just does rinsing really well.
Yes. Totally. They're great on fender wells too, like inside of wheels.
Yeah. If you get them too close to that carpet, it will jack those things up.
Dude, don't put your finger inside one of those turbo nozzles anywhere close to that thing. You could rip your finger off. It's no joke. Okay, so anyway, I'm interrupting. So you get Joe customer comes in. Here we go.
Entry level coating job. You know, he just wants a polish job, ceramic coat. Give me some really good protection. So rinseless wash the car, wet wash the wheels and tires. Then if there's contamination on it, I generally acid wash the car. And when I say acid washing, I'm not spraying acid all over the car. I pour it onto a towel. I rub it over said section. Could be the whole roof, trunk lid, hood, fender, whatever. I allow it to dwell for about 30 seconds, and then I just lightly agitate. Now, this is a microfiber towel.
Wait, aren't you laying it on with the towel in the first place? Because you're not spraying it. So you're agitating it on. Okay, so then you're not breathing as much. So you're pouring it. And what is this? Like you get it from your local detail shop? What is wheel acid?
Yeah, it's the one I use is a tri-blend. It's from Detail Link out of Georgia. Ryan Crosby over there. It's his house brand. It's a tri-blend. Right off the top of my head, I can't tell you what the tri-blend is. But it eats up brake dust, all kinds of contamination, right? Now, if I do that, so after I'm done, I do the acid wash on it. Of course, I neutralize it, rinseless wash, wipe it down one more time, dry it off.
Wait, let's talk about this. So you apply it by towel, you let it dwell 30 seconds, then are you rinsing it off?
No, I spray it down with rinseless wash, and then I take a damp rinseless towel, and I wipe over it and dry it off.
Okay, so you're not even hosing off the acid.
No, because it's not going down into any of the cracks or anything like that. It's topical. It's right there on the surface. I'm not soaking the panel where it's going to get down into everything, because that could be an issue, right? If you're getting it down behind door handles and mirrors where it can. The only issue I've ever had with using acids is on bare metal stuff that's completely untreated, right? That's the only thing where I see where it's corrosive and it actually does some damage. So like some people's brake rotors, their brake calipers, sometimes they're unpainted, untreated. I've seen issues with that type of stuff. I pay attention to that. But for the most part on a car, there's no substrate where I can't put that on safely, neutralize it with a waterless wash, and go about my day. Because honestly, if you try it knocks off 90% of it, dude, especially on white cars with like tons of brake dust, like on the trunk and the back bumper. What you'd have to do to clay that off versus this process, dude, it cuts the time by like 80%. Because when you're claying, that slurry hides a lot of that stuff, especially as you start to get down to the final bits. You have to dry it off, blow it, make sure it's completely dry. Then you can kind of see there's a couple more specks, so you re-wet it and you do it some more, and you still didn't get it. It's a nightmare. With the acid, you wipe it on, let it go for about 30 seconds, and then you just slowly, gently, just wipe it, and it just all comes off. If there, most times there's not much left over, and then I just polish. If it's really heavy, like I said, and a lot of the cars I'm doing are a year old, maybe brand new. I don't do a ton of old cars. If it was the case that I couldn't, like it wasn't getting it all off, during my neutralization process, that's when I bust out a clay mitt or a clay towel. Old school clay, every once in a while, but the drawbacks to old school clay is it breaking down and getting into cracks, nooks, and crannies as you can't get it out of. That's just my method, right? If there's still something there, I'll hit it real quick during the neutralization process, clay it, move on about my day. Then after I'm done with the prep phase, the washing phase, that's when I come through with my panel wiping, my alcohol. Generally, it's 91% alcohol.
You're just using isopropyl alcohol? Just cheap?
91%. I buy it from Walmart's. It's like $2 a quart, maybe $3 now. It went up a little bit after COVID, but yeah, I got probably 12 bottles back there. That's like my number one for prepping a surface, because in my mind, what I've done to clean that car so far, there's nothing that the 91% is not going to take care of, right?
Well, because we talk about it a lot, like if you're using polishes and they have silicone and oils or whatever, if you just use isopropyl alcohol, it may not be enough to remove them after the polishing. But again, you're talking about using IPA before polishing. So this is your system. I love it. Okay.
Yeah, and here's another thing when it comes to stripping polishes. I think 2 rounds of 91% will get any polish residue gone. And the way I wrap my head around that one, if during your first round of IPA, you might see some residue left behind. If I'm wiping and I see residue left, because I'm not drying it off, I just spray it on the towel, I wipe that panel. If residue is still there, then I come back with a secondary round of IPA. So I'm never drying it off. I don't, because I want to know that I'm not just wiping away. So, I'm just wiping away that spent residue, and there's still something there. So whenever I panel wipe a car, if there's any residue left over from that 91%, I need to do it one more time.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying.
So I've done that. Now it's time to polish. It really depends on the car. What product I'm going to use is going to be heavy, medium, fine, primer polish. And then, of course, I team it up with a different pad. Like, so if it's like a silver Audi, I could use like a blue HDO pad or, something more aggressive. Sometimes even like a polishing microfiber pad, right? And I can buzz over it, and it's not going to leave any haze. Basically, I want to go as aggressive as possible with that primer polish without creating a haze, right? Because
you can get away with a lot with wool or microfiber on silver paint, can't you?
For sure. Especially, 100%. So when I'm polishing these cars, I'm trying to get around them in under an hour. I'm not correcting the paint. I'm cleaning the paint. I'm just prepping it for the coating, right? So anything like, say, if I didn't clay the car, the polishing is part of the job of decontaminating the paint also. So, and the way I kind of look at that is if I can see and anyone who's been polishing for a while, if you could see the little specks of contamination through your polish, you should have clayed the car, right? So I know when I'm polishing, I can see a smooth, even slurry. It's almost like waxing a car, but I'll use a little bit more pressure, and a lot more overlap. So
with your compound and polishing stages, or just with your one step?
Just for the entry level stuff. The entry level only receives the world's fastest polish job.
Got it. And you're thinking about it like I'm just cleaning the paint in this process. Okay.
I'm not correcting it, and I've already discussed this with the customer. The customer knows what he's getting, and I've gotten it out of my mind. And this used to be a really insidious thing for me, was that I was worried about other people seeing my work and saying that, oh, this guy does shit work. I'm over that. I am so transparent with my customer on what he's getting that it only matters to me what he thinks. And when my customers pick up their car, they think it's amazing. So, I don't care what the detailer down the street or anybody else thinks of work.
Yeah, another old head in the game, Todd Helm, said he used to be real paranoid of, what if another detailer in the area saw this work and called him out on one of these forums, right? And I was almost detailing for the discerning YouTubers who were going to watch my work in 4K and make sure that I didn't leave any micro marring or DA haze behind. Not my customers. They couldn't have cared less. So that's so fascinating. So that's your process for the entry-level coating. And then and then the rest of your coatings are what, 2 steps, or how do you market those?
So essentially it's a 1.5 step. It's like about all I'm doing these days. Cut in small sections, finish in large sections, never wipe off in between. You're only wiping off after your polishing phase.
I want to know what happened with Koch Chemie, KCX. Tell me about that.
So I got in with them when they first came to America. I actually had their product years ago, and I really enjoyed it. And Andrew, I was with Andrew at G-Technic. I was there before him, and then he took over. He came in as the CEO of North America, and him and I always had a great relationship. And the way G-Technic was going, I was like, I'd actually already kind of like put in my resignation before he started. But we had, there was a little bit of a transfer. I said, look, I'll stick around for a few months just to, help you get this all built out and make sure that you have all the pieces in place. I'm not just leaving you high and dry. So we had a great relationship. Kosh came in, Andrew gets Kosh, and immediately calls me and says, "Hey man, what are you doing? You got some time?" And after G-Technic, I was kind of, I'm just gonna go back, keep doing my polishing things. I never stopped detailing. There's never been a moment where I put my business on the back burner for a manufacturer, and that's still the case to this day. This is my bread and butter. This is what I do every day. And this is why I'm so successful at all my other endeavors, because I have this experiential knowledge of this. Like you could say a lot of things about me, but you'll never say, I don't know what I'm doing. If you come and you work with me, you can never say that I don't know what I'm doing. And I want to stay, abreast of the latest things. So I have to be here doing it. I can't just rest on my laurels, otherwise, I'll go stagnant and I'll no longer be of value. So Kosh comes in, they hire me, I go to work for them. There's just a lot of growing pains at the beginning. And my whole thing was like, look, I just ended up sitting around a lot, and I didn't like that. I'm like, look, if I'm, I don't want you, because they were kind of fine with it. They were like, hey, just, when we get your marching orders, we'll give them to you. But there's so much going on that, like, I was just kind of sitting around collecting a paycheck and not really giving any value. So it ended like Andrew and I, Jason and I were still great buddies because it was ended amicably. I was like, look, dude, I was like, if there's not something for me to like really do, I've been sitting around for a while now. I don't, I just don't, I don't want to collect your money and not give value. It doesn't, I don't feel good inside my, I don't care what you guys think. It's about me. It's kind of like the polishing game too. It's like, I don't care how you feel. I need to feel good, And so we ended that amicably.
So what were you doing for them? Just trainings and SEMA, and what was your role there?
So it ended up, I really didn't do many trainings. I only did a few trainings for them. Of course, went to SEMA a couple times for them. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to create content and give out, information. Like my whole goal there was I want to take every single one of the products and break it down. How do you use this? What's the dilution ratio? Like all the questions that we were going to get phone calls about, the stuff that wasn't on the label,
Right.
I wanted to make a video about. And like, look, this did Germans, so that we don't have the budget for that right now. So I said, well, I mean, we're not talking a lot of money here, bud, but whatever, okay. So I just sat back and chilled and waited around. And I think they're in a much better spot now. They're creating content now. They're doing a lot more trainings, and I love to see that for them. I think they've done a really great job. But for me, I had to push on.
And by pushing on, you ended up at Lake Country. What's the role? How did that happen? Tell me about Lake Country.
All right. So Bob Eichelberg and I have been buddies for years.
Bob's a character. I actually want to get him on the podcast.
Yeah, he's retiring. He's the 6th was his last day. He's officially retired.
Oh, wonderful. Now he can spill all the secrets of his Lake Country.
Yeah, he created a Facebook page now, so we can go on his Facebook and harass him.
Perfect.
But yeah, so
for those who don't know, Bob Eichelberg is the guy who brought Flex tools to North America, really, and then has worked at Lake Country. There's a whole story there that I want to tell you on this podcast. Anyway, just continue on, Andy.
Yeah, so back in the day when I got my head out of my own ass and decided that I need to get out there and get other people's opinions, see how other people are doing things, I started going to trade shows, right? And I remember meeting Bob, and I'm always an inquisitive guy. I'm always going over there, like talking about, hey, what's this, what's that, I don't know. I think when it comes to this, like maybe not in other things, but in the detail game, I'm a deep thinker, right? So I would go over and ask him questions, and so we ended up forming a good relationship. And then I remember one time I was at a Mobile Tech Expo, and Mothers and Lake Country had a booth together, and they had it set up to where someone was polishing, but they didn't have a demo. So it was just someone standing on one side polishing, and he was showing you it, and I was like, well, hey, you mind if I come back there and just like do one of those, And he's like, yeah, come on back. So I'm back there just testing their stuff out, and next thing you know, people started coming up, and so I just started. I was like, I'm a salesman, so I just started talking to people, and we had a pretty good crowd. So so then the one guy from Mothers was like, man, we should just hire you. I'm like, oh, any day. And then so knowing Bob and already being kind of ingratiated and always using Lake Country products, they were on it. Bob went to work for Lake Country. They were forming a new initiative, and they reached out to me and said, hey, man, how would you like to come be a member of our pro team? And what that kind of includes is we shoot a lot of content. We had a little bit of a stalling point last year with the content. We just didn't know direction-wise what we wanted to do. But we have a whole new initiative for this year. And we started shooting new content for that. And it's not going to be solely based on the products of Lake Country. Of course, it's going to involve them, but it's going to be all aspects of detailing, right? We're not, because look,
good for you.
I can really run out of things to talk about in polishing pretty quick if all we're doing is polishing, right? So they're like, hey, Andy, like whatever you run into, if you can solve a problem for someone, that's what we want from you. So it'll be basically live action of me in my shop, working day to day. And hey, man, I need to clean out these emblems, or how do I safely clean this gloss black wheel? There's just anything to have to do with detailing. Just give my opinion on it, solve a problem, and kind of just, they gave me free reign to kind of do what I want to do.
How long have you been with Lake Country now? A couple years?
This is my second year right now.
Okay, because I remember seeing you 2 SEMAs ago.
Yep.
Now, what happened with the polisher? Is the polisher still a thing? I remember that was a demo at SEMA a couple years ago. I haven't heard much about it.
That's a good question. I don't entirely know where we sit with that.
Okay.
To be honest with you, and maybe a little bit of fear of getting in trouble. We had issues with some of the internal workings of the machine. So we had to re-engineer some pieces and then rip apart all the old machines that we already had and replace it. So I honestly don't know where that's going right now. I can tell you one thing. I really believe for a DIY guy just getting into it, if you just wanted one machine, that could be a feasible option for you. You know, it has a rotary, has 15 millimeter, has an 8 millimeter throw. Is a professional gonna toss out his root pass or flex or something else and use that? Let's be honest. I don't believe so. But if you're just getting into the game, you're new to it, or you're a DIY guy, I believe that's a really good option for you.
Speaking of being a DIY guy, sometimes that's where the professional will start, right? And we all know this as an enthusiast, and then you get the bug, and then next thing you know, you're doing friends and family, and you got a little side hustle, and you feel proud, and then, you know, from there, it's kind of, I don't know, it can get a little dangerous because then you start detailing in all your spare time, and then what happened to your spare time, and you're still relying on your main income, and you're trying to figure out all these things. For that person out there, Andy, what advice do you have to give? Because we just talked about how you had gone from employees to back to a single operation guy who will literally get other pros, you know, as like contractors on big boat jobs because you do a lot of marine down in Florida. But I just wonder, from where you sit, mistakes made, what's the goal? Should it be the big empire? Should it be the solo thing? Like, you've learned so many things from so many, obviously, successes, but a lot of failures, just like we all have. What have you learned that could help somebody out there who doesn't have your level of experience?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. That's like one of the big things that I've been wrapping my head around for the past 4 years is, if I was to give advice to somebody, what can really, just like with my training on technical, it's like, what is the best advice I can give that they can actually do something actionable, right?
Yes.
For one, if you're a DIY guy and you're moving on and you want to have your own actual business doing this, right? Do not burn your bridges. You need to transition into this, right? There's so many people out there with this culture of grinding and like, oh, you just got to jump in head first or whatever, both feet in, stand on business. I'm like, dude, you unless you're 20 years old and, you know, still live at home, like, you need to map yourself a path to getting there. You can't just go, oh, I'm in. No. The best thing, like when you're in that thing where you have this is your side hustle, is you can map out everything you do, your processes, your procedures, it's like franchise modeling your business at the beginning. Because I franchise modeled my business, and I didn't do that till 12 years into it. And once I started actually making a model of my business, everything started operating, 1,000% smoother. So if you could do that at the beginning, really map it out. How do you want it to look? How do you want to greet your customers? Everything, just every nuance. Read some books like The E-Myth, The Who, Not the How. There's great stuff out there. And just don't get involved in this whole grind, hard, no sleep culture. Look, one of the biggest fallacies in this world is that you can live off of 3 or 4 hours of sleep. You can't. You're going to burn out. You're going to hurt your heart. You're going to hurt all kinds of stuff. Just make it as smooth of a transition as possible. All right. Don't just, I've seen too many people just jump in and they sink after a year or two,
I think 3 to 4 hours of sleep could be a season of your life, but please don't make, I think 3 to 4 hours of sleep can be a season of your life.
Right.
But don't make it your whole life. Cause like there's times where you may need to be grinding like that. And I'm going to respect that if that's your life, but it is not sustainable. And I'm like, I wonder how many years less I'm going to live because of those 2 or 3 years where I was literally sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. It was.
And that's the worst thing I see on social media is like these grown men in their 40s and 50s, like talking about that. And it's like, dude, like if you look at the actual research on these types of things, like your diminished capacity for thinking, for physical activity, all that stuff is it's so diminished that you're never going to perform at your highest level, right?
You know what's so fascinating is I remember sitting in this very room and editing a video until like 3 a.m. And the video that I recorded in my Hawk Pro detailing shop, I was up till 8 a.m. that recording it, right? And I knew it was like an epic paint transformation on this Tundra. It was black paint. I stayed up all night just wet sanding and like perfectly finishing like 2 panels, okay, till 8 a.m. But to record it all, and I had the GoPro and the 3 cameras, and I was mic'd up just to do that. And then I remember editing it another night, and I was up till 3 a.m. doing it. That video has like dominated on my channel. So there's something about of like I gave a lot because I knew it was a really good visual and it was going to be good and it was worth that. So there's always the devil's advocate that could say, well, it might have been worth it. But I also remember like all the times where, I don't know, like I would come home from Hawk Pro detailing, get 1.5 hours of sleep here. This is early on when I was still at the shop, and then set my alarm to go pick up my kids and bring them to school. And I'm not proud of this, but like I slept through my alarm, you know? And then my recently like newly ex-wife at the time was like, how do you forget the kid? And I was like, oh my gosh. So like, don't kid yourself that like sleeping a couple hours a night doesn't have consequences. Okay. Like it has consequences. So like, I look back at that and I'm like, wow, you know, and now I could be editing at 10 o'clock at night. And if I don't have the motivation to cover a long stretch of our thing with B-roll, I'm like, all right, shut it down, dude. I'm tired. But there's times where you don't quite bring that level of awareness to the game and you just keep staying up for hours and hours because you're feeding it without Adderall or Monster. Anyway, I digress, dude. I'm passionate about enough sleep because I think it's a game changer.
Yeah, me too. I actually, I don't know. I came down with sleep apnea like a year ago. I don't know why. Like, everyone's like, oh, usually it's like obese people and like people are out of shape. And I believe I'm in fairly good shape. I take pretty good care of myself. And yeah, I got sleep apnea and my sleep was atrocious. Like, I mean, like I was always that guy who could get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning and just like, it would take me 8 minutes to get out of my house. From waking up to in my car, 8 minutes, right? And then it got to the point where, dude, like I was like snoozing my alarm, and like I was waiting until like, okay, it takes me 22 minutes to get to my shop. I would, it was bad. So went and started with like mouthpieces and mouth tape and different gadgets, and ended up with a CPAP. So I could actually get some proper sleep. You know?
That's crazy because I've seen photos of you like doing your CrossFit stuff or whatever you do, and like you're in really good shape. You do really think like this is something that folks maybe who look a little more overweight would have.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But what do I know? Not a doctor. All right. Anyway, so that's new. Sleep apnea for Andy. Be cool. Okay.
So yeah. So when it comes to like the scaling of your business and all that stuff, look, I've been through like every iteration of this detailing game. At the beginning, I was like, I was like, boom, I want to have a huge crew. So like we were like 8 strong, doing marine and RV detailing, just grinding them out, and it was like this volume detailing where you're getting like $10 a foot to wash and wax and polish the wheels on a 50 or 45 foot RV. Just grinding, doing like 4, 5, 6 of those a day. Marine detailing, just grinding, right? And this was my early 20s, so that was all good, right? And but I remember like the first year after business, I was like, yeah, I made a ton of money, but man, there's a ton of overhead. So I decided then, I was like, okay, well let's drop back down to like 4 guys and just kind of, make sure that we can still make money, and let's see where we go with that. And I actually pocketed more money with the 4 guys, right? And that was a really great period because I had like built-in clientele at these marinas and these RV parks. It's like, as long as you showed up and did your job, you're going to get more work every time you showed up, so I was really, particular about punctuality. Like, I don't care if I was at the light around the corner and I was going to be 2 minutes late, I would call the customer. Like if it was 7:58, I'll be, hey, just let you know I'm like 2 minutes behind. I was just, because people love that,
Yeah, they
And,
do love that. You're right. Yeah.
yeah, so I was really particular about that type of stuff, and I was new to all of it, but I knew one thing, that customers liked you to show up on time, because that was also like the biggest gripe that I got about the other detailing services that were in the area doing the same thing I was doing. Is like, they show up whenever they want or whatever, like that kind of lackadaisical approach. They assumed because these people were retired that they could just show up whenever they wanted and whatever. So yes, we dropped back down to 4 guys, and then. About 7 years ago, I decided I wanted out of the volume marine type stuff. I was starting to get into paint corrections and coatings and all that stuff. I was offering paint corrections on boats and RVs, but we're all outside, and it was just brutal. So I actually gave away my entire book of RV and marine business to my brother, and I gave him one of my vans, and I said, "Dude, this is yours." I was like, "Just do me a favor and make sure these people don't call me anymore, okay? Because I don't want to explain to everybody that I'm out of it." Because I built some really great relationships in that market. I had people that I had seen for 7 or 8 years in a row. They would call, "Hey Andy, we're back. Come do my RV or my boat." And these kind of I just didn't want to have to explain to everybody, because they're all going to give me the sob story about, "Oh Andy, but no one does it like you."
Yeah,
and so that's why I was like, my brother would be perfect, like,
right.
He's like a spitting image of me, and
They'll think it's him.
yeah. So I did that, and I got into my first shop, and it was funny. My first shop, well, actually, it was my second shop when I first started. I had a tiny little shop, but we were pretty much all mobile. I wasn't doing a lot of work out of that shop, so we get into my first real shop, and it's like you could fit 1 car comfortably. I could fit 2 at night. If I was holding one overnight and had another one to work on the next morning, the next day, I could pack them in there real tight. Like you'd have to have someone come on, a little closer. Hey, stop, type of thing. I was like, I'm going to pursue this, and that was rough. I'll tell you that, because I didn't plan it out well. And that's where, I'm saying, you have to plan those changes, maybe I was a little delusional, because when I got into the RVs and boats, it happened so fast and so quick that I became profitable, that I thought it was going to happen no matter what I did. Right. But I still had a year of kind of just struggle, where I just remember sitting around going, "Oh God, am I going to be able to pay these bills?" And going around searching for business. I had to hit the streets and go talk to clients. I actually had to start calling my clients. "Hey, what's up? How's it going? I got anything to be done?" I had to swallow some pride there. But yeah, but after I got rolling on that, that moved pretty quick. So to where now I'm in, I moved to another shop. I made the mistake there of not seeing what it was like to be there during the day. I went there on a weekend to check it out, and look cool, everything. But then so I signed the lease, and I get in there, and the first Monday I was there, dude, the parking lot was packed full of cars. There's all kinds of people blocking everything. It was an absolute nightmare. There's trash everywhere. I'm like, dude, I can't have my clients, driving through here. There's a dumpster that was out back that you could see from my door that was just always overflowing. I'm like, oh my God. I got him to move the dumpster, but still the nightmare in the morning. It was crazy. Oh, I found out there was a cabinet shop next door and a body shop behind me in the same building, but my bay wasn't sealed. My shop wasn't sealed off completely so I would polish a car, coat it, come back the next morning, and there'd be body filler dust. And
same with me.
I over my cars.
My first small shop was about 800 square feet. I was next to a cabinet shop, and there was a layer of dust over, and my roof leaked. So, but we wanted to talk. I don't want to spend another hour on this, if I can say that respectfully. I want to talk about what the goal is. Is it to scale a big thing, a small thing? Could we bridge a little bit of this story and just kind of hit the highlights of what you learned along that road?
Yeah. So basically what I learned along this whole route is that I'm not a great leader. That's probably the overall, I'm not a great leader. And I actually went out and did personality tests, and they said, Andy, you're you can create a vision and you can get people to do it, but you can't be there for it. All right. Because the thing is, you're going to micromanage the shit out of everybody. You're going to piss everyone off. What you need to do is come in, create the vision, and just be the guy who comes in and cheerleads every so often. Hey man, did great. Doing good. Yeah. You need help, but just don't be on top of people, right? Because then I'm expecting them to do it exactly my way every time. And there's more than one way to skin the cat. So I don't need to be there. As long as the cat gets skinned, I don't need to be there for the skinning.
Yep.
And so where it all boils down to right now where I'm at is that with working with manufacturers and doing my shop thing, I enjoyed this how it is, me by myself. Right? Everything's put away where I want it to be. I don't have to worry about anybody else's life. No, I'm not babysitting anyone. When I look at my finances, I'm making just as much money as when I had 3 employees. Right? I'm making the same amount of money. Okay, so like it's not worth. Yeah, I did more. I had more revenue. We made more money in the business, but what I actually put in my pocket is exactly the same.
Wow.
So, it doesn't make sense for me to stress out because we need that work-life balance.
Totally. If folks are interested in learning more about you, where can they find you online, Mr. Cool?
You can find me at the Detail Freaks on all the social medias. And then, just DM me. And I love to talk shop. And that's like, I want to help other people come up, right? That's where I'm at in my life. I'm the grizzled veteran, and I want to see other people come up. I don't expect you, like I said, to take everything I say and make it your credence, but like take the little bits that I give you, the little seeds, apply it, see if it works for you, and if it does, that's awesome.
And I forgot to ask this. Your real name is Andy Be Cool.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Man, what a name. What a name.
Yeah, well, you got to live up to the name. That's the hard part.
Was it hard living up to the name?
Oh, at times. At times you just wanted to not be cool.
Andy Be Cool. Like, did you get picked on? Was that the coolest name ever? Like, I just said cool.
Never got picked on. It was like the teachers and like, Andy, be cool. Hey, Mr. Cool. That was about it.
That's your real last name? I've never heard of anyone with the last name of Cool.
So, I know my family, right? But like, I've never met anyone else with the last name Cool. I should probably do a little more research into where it came from. I assume that like it got shortened or something when the family came across the sea or something. Well,
it could have been like a German, like cool with like a U and an umlaut, and you changed it to seem less something. I don't know. What do I know?
Maybe by this time next year I'll have that figured out.
We'll have you on next January to talk about it. Mr. Awesome. Andy Be Cool, dude, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate you, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, brother.